Okay, do you want to just reiterate quickly what you just said?
Okay. I'm Pastor Camelia Joseph. I'm in Houston, Texas, and my Kingdom Works Ministry is here. And I'm a church consultant, primarily church growth and church health. I lived in Pasadena for over 20 years and worked alongside with Jill as she was developing her ministry there, and became very passionate about affordable housing as a result of it. So when I met Jill in the Christian Community Developers Conference in November, and she told me about the project you guys were doing there, I got very excited and just a desire to bring it here to Texas. So we're focused on building a team here in Texas. We have already 3 churches that I've met with pastors and viewed their lands, and a 4th one that's out of town that we're waiting for him to get back. And we have an amazing person with a great background that is a part of our team, Pastor Allison. His church also owns several lots that he's hoping to develop for his church as well. So,
thank you.
Yes.
So Jessica and Joseph, do you guys want to go next and talk about your hopes for Denver area?
Hi. So we work with Mile High Ministries, and they are a developer. So I don't know. That's something we have to talk through. In 2019, I was part of a program called the Congregational Land Campaign. And we did this work. We were educating churches, and we were actually able to get 3 or 4 churches through the RFP process to connect with the mission-aligned developer. And we've been visiting and reconnecting with those churches. So we're working on figuring out what this is going to look like exactly. And just kind of in the discerning portion of it all, and really learning and taking it in and learning about different models, and just letting God kind of form us, and like, what do you want it to be, right, Lord? So yeah, that's where we're at.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything to that, Joseph?
No, yeah, I mean, same as Jessica, but I just think that we're coming at a little bit of a different angle where we've got a lot of things going, but we're trying to have to figure out how do we get the word out there that we're working in this area to the congregations. And we're excited as we feel like, maybe we can start from a different perspective and help churches answer the question, what does today's church look like? What is it doing to help the community? And how can we rethink this and make it something that it's probably not right now? So we're really excited about that, as we feel like that's a message that we want to connect with a lot of churches, but we also want to not seem opportunistic. We have a need for housing, and it's just, something that's burning inside of us. But I would like guidance on how to go and present this idea, right?
Sounds great. Michelle?
Yeah, my name is Michelle Cross. I'm coming from, right now I live in Central Oregon, and I'm part of Mountain View Fellowship. But prior to that, I grew up in Central Oregon, but prior to that, I was down by you guys in Southern California. I went to UCLA for grad school and for business school. And while I was there, focused on real estate finance and development, and then worked for the Rakovich Company in Los Angeles for a while. So working on the block, and the Alhambra is kind of close to you Pasadena people.
Yeah, right.
Anyway,
Absolutely.
My husband and I are both from here. And so when we started a family, we knew we were going to come back up. So that's how we got back to Central Oregon. And in attending Mountain View, working with Pastor Rick, the church does a lot in the community based around those who are unhoused, but we have some land and have a possibility of actually creating some housing and then working with other churches to do the same. And so we are in very early stages of this, but excited to be here and just kind of
I was
So,
impressed how Pastor Rick already had connections with churches in Portland and has a
Yeah.
network where you're
Yes.
already meeting on a regular basis. Are some of those churches interested in housing on their campus?
Yeah, we had a meeting with, 4 or 5 other churches just to kind of, just to start talking, and we'll see where things go, but excited to learn.
Right. Well, why don't you take it away, Phil, and share briefly our model and why we feel like it's a good one. So do you want me to share from our website the outline of that, or do you want to just share something yourself?
I'll share it. I'll share it myself, I think.
Okay.
But maybe if you get the conflict of interest policy
Okay, I'll get that ready.
queued up there, we can discuss that as well. So apologies to those of you who heard this last time. So I'm going to go through this really quickly. And then, but I want to make sure that those who were not here for the last meeting have a chance to hear this as well. So this is sort of I think this is one of the things that really distinguishes us quite a bit, is the model that we use for working with congregations. And as you guys have alluded to, particularly the Denver crew over here, that there are multiple ways of approaching this. And I think there's a time and a place for a lot of different models of how to do this, but ours we think is really strong. We've seen the fruit of it, and we've been in a lot of dialogue with partners and other people across the country who have said that it's really kind of enlightened them a lot and inspired them as well. So we want to share that. What we came at this from our team having experience with success stories and huge failures in terms of church-related development projects, and some projects that were successes, but they were very uneven successes in the sense that somebody else made a lot of money off of the development and the church walked away with pretty much nothing. And so what have we learned? What do we think makes a successful project? Well, congregation vision being centered, providing missional and economic benefits for the congregation, partnering with a developer, so not the church doing it by itself. It's rare, maybe Michelle, if you're in the church, right? And you actually have years of experience as a real estate developer. Okay. Maybe your church can indeed be its own developer, but typically, yeah, this is not the situation, and a partnership is required. And then a fourth component is really to build support from your local government, really critical for affordable housing. So what we do is, we are advisors, right? That's what this apprenticeship program is about. Advisory teams. Sorry. So we advise churches that are interested in developing their land into affordable housing. And we see two main results from our work. The first is a really solid plan for the development on the campus that's supported by all the players that need to support it. All the players that are going to later be able to veto it or cause problems, internally, externally. We want to get all their support from the beginning so that when it's executed, people are happy. And then secondly, selecting a qualified and prepared affordable housing developer who will give the church a fair deal for use of the property. And it's that second part actually that it's more rare to find models and advisors that are sort of able to secure that for congregations. So our process begins with identifying congregations, informing them through an educational cohort that we go through, and where we give education, and we take sort of an initial look, high level look at the site, what zoning is, what constraints they have, what the congregational will seems to be, that sort of thing, to get the project done. And that with the congregation's able to answer a more detailed questionnaire intake form. And then from then on, yeah, go ahead, Jill, you were going to say something?
No,
Okay, so from there, we move into, we actually execute an agreement for professional services, where we enter into a formal contractual relationship as advisors with the church, and then serve in that capacity through the remainder of the process. So once we have that, then we're conducting initial feasibility studies. We're then moving into a phase of review and discernment, first internally with the congregation, and then externally with outside players as necessary. And then, as you referred to, Jessica, the RFP process, the RFP that's based on the vision that the church wants, right? So it's not just a generic, hey, we want somebody to come in and help develop, see what you can propose, but this is what the church wants, and this is what the church expects in terms of the deal. Have developers respond to that, choose the best one, negotiate the agreements, and then from there on, the development process really in earnest can begin, the pre-development and development process. So that would be between the congregation and the developer, walking through the actual design of the project, entitlements for the project, financing, construction, lease up, operations. So but we're focused at the earlier stages, right? What's called the pre-development stages is really all of this that we do, 1 through 5, step 1 through 5 anyway. So yeah, here is our progress to date, as of probably last summer. So we, have had a lot of congregations interested, and it does take some time to walk through this process. So you can see here 15 completed feasibility studies. At the time that I prepared these numbers, we only had 3 signed agreements for 224 units. But others are getting there as well. This process typically takes 6 months to a year for us to get through it with the congregation. I guess including the step 1 cohort, it's, I would say it's definitely a year process, typically. So would you like me to continue on the funding, Jill, or maybe we should cover the...
Let's talk about the conflict of interest and see if there's any questions on this.
Would you like to share that?
Particular model, and then we'll talk briefly about the conflict of interest. What are some questions you all have about this particular model? Oh, there's Andre. That's great. Hi, Andre. Good to see you. See your great photo. So do you guys understand in terms of why we kind of separate being the developer from this process? Does that make sense? Why that would be needful in our particular model? It makes sense. Okay. And that's part of our conflict of interest policy. And I'll just do a screen share right now so you can take a peek at it, and you can look at just the last few there's step number 5 and 6. So the committee can submit proposals, members of the committee for the work with the different client churches from organizations they represent when the RFP for service is issued by the church, as long as it's open and a competitive process. So it doesn't mean you can't submit, but if you're the one doing the technical work, like in terms of all the work that Andre, he's going to share briefly some of the work he does. But when we're involved in the guts of understanding this particular church, that does give us a leg up. And so so even though, anyway, we just feel like
Let me, if
we could explain it better. Thanks.
well, I think in general, so we are not those of us that sign an agreement to work as an advisor for a congregation, we are not developers, and we will not act in the role of developer for a project. We sit on the church's side the entire time through the process. Okay. So that's really clear. That's and that is something that is absolutely essential to the way that we approach this. With this particular point here relating to number 5, relates to that our broader committee includes folks like Hugh, who are affordable housing developers and would be eligible to bid on these projects. But Hugh, for example, has not been he has not been advising the churches through this process. He's not been advising a church and then later is going to turn around and bid on the project for the same church.
So our
Distinguish
advisors,
his role. Phil,
Yeah.
you're saying that he's not been advised, so he does not advise churches? Is that just not his
No.
role? Is that
the
what you're saying?
advisors that we have is Phil and Andre. So we have a committee, but there's only 2 people right now in our committee that are really being paid as advisors. And so as an urban planner looking at the zoning, and then with Andre White looking at the finance around housing development. So they can see both what's feasibly financially and land use wise.
Yeah, let
Those
me,
2 persons are not eligible to bid on
apply
RFP.
to be a
Yeah.
developer. Yeah.
and just to give you a real life example, there was a deal in Sacramento that was in Midtown Sacramento that was owned by a faith-based organization, and they retained somebody to provide them development advice. And this person said, this is what's best to build here, and I'm the best developer for this type of product. So hire me, or you're going to have to pay me $150,000 for breaking this this contract. So basically, on the technical level, there's the opportunity to steer the church in terms of what's possible. So I think that's really what's not allowed. Because that would give a developer an opportunity to steer them, because every developer has a different skill set, a different geographies, specializes in different product type, different construction type, and depending on the church's vision, the zoning, the location, the best developer that for one project may not be the best developer for another project, and may not give the highest return to the church.
But it was a real conflict there in Sacramento, the model that he suggested, or that's real life's example, because it was the developer doing the feasibility and saying, you have to go with us. We're the only one that can do this. And so, the developer was even asking them for $185,000 to do the feasibility. And we're like, what? We can do it for 20,000, you know? So there was something really wrong, but they were not aware of how
Mhm.
much they were taken by this market
Wow.
rate developer. And
Mhm.
Hugh even went ahead and made a bid on it because he could. It wasn't one of the churches we were advising at the time. And they still rejected and went ahead and with this market rate developer that was not really providing them a fair deal at all, and
Mhm.
kind of hoodwinked them into having to be the one, because otherwise they'd have to pay 185,000 for this
Oh,
feasibility that
mhm.
was not
Very,
worth it.
very,
And so,
okay, so it may not, is it the time for questions? So you want me to wait?
yeah, go for questions, and then I want Andre to jump in and share his role before we go to talk about some of the
Okay.
funding.
So the people that's on the team are not able to be a part of or apply for development. How are they are they compensated, or are they volunteers, or what in their roles?
I think we're not exactly saying that people are on the team they could apply, but they can't be the advisors on the
Okay.
team.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
And so in a minute, we'll be talking about some possible ways for compensation for your team.
Mhm.
Yeah, good question.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
The other question that I had, we haven't gotten to yet, I don't think. I mean, I just kind of put the word out there, and before I realized that I had 4 churches, and I haven't even gotten to my ministers alliance yet. I told the president, but haven't told anybody else. So I'm like, whoa, you know. So then the question is, you know, when we talk about number of churches we should be working with, the proximity that they are, you know, I just like to put that out there for us to talk about at some point.
It's a good question. Yeah. And I
Mhm.
think I think the temptation is just to find a lot of churches initially when you don't have the team ready yet.
Mhm.
And so equipping the team is got to be high priority, and getting a good team. That
Mhm.
takes time, you know, to
Right.
gel and come up with your policies. Like I put in chat conflict of interest policy. So that's just a sample. You guys can riff off that and adjust
Okay.
it for your own. But, you
Yeah.
know, all that development, you know, we've created a brochure. We did a lot to kind of create our team and our processes and how we were doing this
Mhm.
before we started putting our shingle out, you know, and saying we're now open for business. So, yeah, other questions? Good questions.
Yeah, I have a comment. So I think another motive for us is to make this competitive. Our RFP process is competitive, where we invite various developers to make proposals on, because we think it gives congregations more leverage
Mhm.
when projects are being when there's competition
Mhm.
to get these projects. So I know Hugh gave us a proposal out of his development firm on one of our RFPs that Andre and Phil put together. And he had a good proposal, but he wasn't selected for that particular project. So I think that illustrates the way we do our work is we don't have any loyalties, and we pick the best bid developer, and who knows, Hugh might be the best developer on another RFP, but we do keep things separate, and we keep it competitive as much as possible. So I would add that.
Oh, thank you, Phil, for sharing the model again. And I think you guys all need to keep reviewing it, making sure you understand it. And thank you for that comment, John. And Phil and Hugh, it makes it really clear, I think. Andre, could you introduce yourself? We did introductions of our team earlier, and just share briefly what your role again is on the team, and so people can see how vital what you do is to our team. Are you there? Yeah, there he goes. Great.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, was a little late. My schedule's a little nutty right now. But Andre White of Mitchell Real Estate Group. My primary role just is to advise landowners, developers, investors across California on affordable housing and workforce housing projects. In the context of here, it's representation for landowners or building owners who want to utilize their land or buildings to provide an affordable workforce housing solution. And that advisement usually takes place in tandem with a planning team. And we sort of look at what the planning team is focused on, the feasibility of, spatially, sort of the zoning code, sort of the by right or not by right entitlements that takes to create the vision to create housing. Then I come in and look at, okay, what's happening in the actual marketplace? What are investors saying? What are builders saying? What are developers saying? Can this be feasible? How the financing programs work at the state level, at the local level, at the county or federal level? How that can be overlapped, and then how do we put together a project that can meet the market's demand and the nuances of what's happening in the financing world or development world at that time. And then so we take that package, we craft it, we put it into an RFP, we go out to the developer community, and I'm with you to negotiate the best possible deal. Right, so it's like oftentimes churches or non-institutional landowners who are approached directly by the development and investment community aren't equipped to negotiate. Don't understand their land, don't understand the leverage, don't understand the financing markets, don't understand what can you actually get economically out of a deal? How much power do you have to shape what's actually built on your property or in your buildings? You have a lot because you own the land and control the land, control the buildings. So it's really just empowering you to actually get both the social societal outcome that can come with housing, right? Affordable market rate workforce, and also the economic benefits that can come out of a ground lease as opposed to a sale. Are there other things that we can get out of the developer? Right, we have the healthy competition. So the one developer might say, I'm only willing to pay you the ground lease payment. The other developer said, I'll give you the ground lease payment plus, I'll give some economic consideration to make, to adapt the sanctuary or adapt this other building, or we'll give you a couple parking spaces. So you have to know that you have that kind of leverage, and you need the team to help you negotiate that. You have the right attorneys, the right accountants. So it's a lot of people that have to come beside the owner to be able to match the developer to get what's fair. And I've been on the other side, right? In my working for private and nonprofit affordable housing developers and going to landowners who aren't as informed, and they cut bad deals. That's partly why I'm doing this work. I saw a church get it taken advantage of, and I was on the project, and I was advising the church on the side, like, you guys have the wrong attorneys, you have the wrong accountants. What are you doing? You're coming to meetings unprepared, and everybody on the other side knows it. So it's really important that it's really important that the team that you have at the table is equipped to help you make the decision. It's not just any attorney. It's not just any architect. It's not just any accountant. It's not just any type of developer representative. Market rate developer and affordable housing developer are totally different.
Night and day.
Night and day.
So
how's your market rate developer going to help you come up with a solution for affordable housing, and they've never done it?
Yeah.
Even though they are a housing developer.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to the church that was just mentioned. There was a market rate developer telling them that affordable housing wasn't feasible in downtown Sacramento. Doesn't make any sense. Telling them that they can't do a ground lease doesn't make any sense.
So that's why we're having these meetings, so you can really get clear on all this kind of stuff. We've been doing this now for about 4 years. And so there's a lot of language that Andre used right now that probably went, and you're like, don't even know what questions to ask. And so don't hesitate to ask any questions to Andre in terms of what essential role he has, and finding someone like Andre to serve on your committee that has those kind of skills. And, you know, Andre is able, we have grant funding to pay him, but he also has another whole business, and so does Phil. This is just a very small part of what they do. And so what are the things that maybe weren't clear, that flew by you, that you want him to reiterate? Anything that might be helpful? Yeah, Jessica.
Hi, Andre. I think like
Hi.
what you're doing is awesome. And the work that I've done with churches, all of these financial questions come up, right? And I don't have that background. So if we were looking for you here in Denver, are we looking for like a commercial real estate guy that would know?
No, because they're just a broker, right? So
Okay,
as a broker isn't you really need to have someone who's in a, you know, if you're in the business of wanting to do an affordable or workforce housing or a hybrid deal, you need to talk to someone that has developed and structured affordable housing and workforce housing deals. And Denver has affordable housing, so it's just
Yeah.
sort of, it's
But
just
would
sort
that
of
be a
fine.
developer then?
Or if it's not a developer, it's someone that has development or investment experience in the affordable housing world. And Denver is a specific market. So if
Right.
there is someone who is either investing in affordable housing or developing affordable housing, project manager, assistant project manager, or vice president, someone from an organization, whether it's for-profit or nonprofit, that's building affordable housing in Denver, you can find that person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Probably,
yeah, and I'll add to that I can't emphasize how important it is that they have industry specific experience, because I've come across people who have done market rate development, and they'll try to structure an affordable deals, and their assumptions are just incorrect, and there's no way you could do the deal the way they say you can. So it's very, they have to be very specific.
even legal counsel, right? Like, you know, I'm working with a landowner right now, and he refused to not use his attorney. He refused, right? He's negotiating with the affordable housing developer, and his attorney has only done market rate housing, retail, office buildings, and just the comments and the back and forth is really because he doesn't have the right attorney. He just has a real estate attorney. Doesn't understand any nuances of affordable housing. So when an affordable housing provision needs to be added, he just doesn't get it.
Yeah, and I think because the tax credits rely so heavily on internal revenue code, you have to have somebody with that specific knowledge base. That's what makes it different. Understanding the nuances of the financing structure and the multi-layered finances. It's just very different than market rate. I mean, yeah, the construction, you could, you know, the contractors that builds market rate could adapt to build affordable, but in terms of the financing and the development, it's just a very different beast.
Yep.
I guess the question is, where do we find those people, you know? How?
Well,
If
like
you give us
with
some
city,
advice.
well, I would say
She's in Houston.
Houston. I mean, there's tons of affordable housing that's built in Houston. So it's, I mean, I guess it's, if I went to a city, I would look at, you know, I would go to the city housing department, right? And I would say the city house, because every city housing department, I was like, well, what affordable housing developers are you working with, and who's good, right? Like,
He's good.
and then I would look at, and then I would, you know, the larger developers have websites. So is there anybody on this list that I may know, or someone I know may know? And even if it's someone that I don't know, they usually always have someone that's like, say, the vice president of acquisitions or something. Just have a conversation, like, you know, and you're not necessarily trying to transact with them, but there's a lot of developers that may do fee work. So if they do fee work, they're sort of in the business of maybe they could support to help you think about it. and just kind of be candid. This is where we are. We're not trying to give you the business. If we do a project, we're going to do an RFP, but we want to do what's best for the church here, or the ministry, or the congregation. So, I mean, I would start with the city as because they're coming through the planning department and the housing department to get financing.
So there's an amazing person that Camellia sent us a resume, and I know, Phil, you had a chance to read it. Do you think he's the kind of guy that could do what Andre does?
It's quite possible that he could. I don't know that he had done actual, he represented the city in the deal, so he was involved with the financing and determining all that, determining how much financial can be given.
I would say, I don't know if it's biased, I would say no, right? Because like, you have to think like a developer to be able to help someone structure a deal that works to their advantage, right? Because I would say oftentimes cities get taken advantage of too, because they don't think, not taken advantage of, but because of staff turnover, because they've never done a deal, it's always been from the city side. Part of it's political in terms of what the city councilmen and women are thinking, and the mayor, right? Sometimes they're put, at least the land's going in the deal for $1, right? That's just a different position. So if that's the type of transactions you're putting together, then how do you look from a perspective of, I'm trying to get the maximum vision out of feasibility for my client, and I'm also trying to get the maximum economic benefits at the same time. And that's our stance.
So the friend that Camellia's been getting to know, for the sake of all of you, he was mostly involved in housing authorities. And so, all different jurisdictions have housing authorities throughout the country.
Yeah.
And so our particular housing authority here is involved in purchasing land. And then that land is leased to the affordable housing developer for $1 a year.
Well,
And so they're able to get funding to buy that land. But we've had, early on, when we were crafting policy over overlay zones, religious overlay zone for our city, there was even a savvy affordable housing person, and she said, why don't the churches just do the same and lease their land for $1 a year? And I had to say, friend, think about it. You're Jewish, you're part of a synagogue. Would you want your land just leased for $1 a year? Would you want a fair return for the long-term use of that land? It's very different looking at private land as opposed to the city's public land that they purchased. It's two very different things.
Okay, Jill, I'm looking at his resume. He says that he has real estate development background. He successfully developed 7 tax credit properties and rehabilitation of 3,500 public housing units. So he's been on both sides.
Yeah, can I add a little insight to that? Texas is a little different because the housing authorities in Texas are a little bit more proactive than in other states, because in Texas, the housing authorities usually have some participation. So I think it's worth the conversation exploring, and seeing getting a better understanding for his level of involvement, because he seems to have some involvement. I know that in Texas, like I said, housing authorities are more proactive, and they tend to partner with developers in Texas, as opposed to here in California, where we use the nonprofits for the tax abatement. So I think it's a conversation worth having. Worst case, he could point you to somebody if he's not the right person.
And he's also an architect.
Yeah, he's really incredible. It's amazing guy that you found. So, what a blessing to have him on your team, and he's retired, so he has the time, And so, looking at a retired person with all this experience would be great for consideration if you can find someone like that,
I mean, I'm just speaking, I'm just talking broadly, and like, deal making is really hard, right? And oftentimes, like, I feel like there's, you know, people touch aspects of it, but like having to create and put it together and sort of think through like, how can I get that to work for this intent, for this group? It's just different. I'm just, so, like, you just really have to make sure whoever you're working with, they know how to put deals together, not work on a deal, right? It's different, right? Like, because you are starting from scratch. Like you have to come up with a vision. Then you have to go out and believe in that, and you have to go out and actually negotiate and put that together and go extract that from the marketplace. So that is so it really requires that, you know, not you have done, to me, right, that aspect of the business. Because a lot of people have worked on projects. Not a lot of people have put projects together. It's two different things.
So,
Well, I have access to the city
Okay.
we have a guy here, Milton. He does this procurement conference once a month, and he just knows everybody in construction. So he's committed to me to introduce me to city, those in the city housing development department, and helping me to identify some people too. So
you
And
don't
also,
really
I
need
would
a
say that there's
construction person. Yeah, you don't need a construction person for this team.
no, I'm just saying that,
Yeah.
you know, he has access to everybody.
Yeah.
So he'll be able to introduce me to some key people. These are
One other thing.
developers and everything.
One other thing I thought about. So when you're talking to your cities, you can ask, you know, there's a small community of like, you know, owners reps or developer reps. And they're usually third parties like such as myself that, you know, we do things on behalf of developers. So that could also be someone that's more oriented around like they have a business that they can advise for some type of fee. And it's not like a developer looking to get a deal done with you. It's like, okay, you know, it's like an exchange for their knowledge and their access to the industry. So I would,
calling it
when
a
you're having
developer's rep,
developers rep or owners rep, that's on the developer side,
Okay.
that basically is doing a lot of the work. You know, so, you know, I do have developer clients and they sort of farm out things that they can't get to. Right? So there's a industry, at least in California, there's like, I have peers that I know throughout the state that sort of do this kind of work.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and I think that the challenge isn't so much as finding the skill set, because there are definitely people with that skill set in your cities. I think really the challenge is finding somebody that's transparent and really vouching for them, because, and as I was telling Jill, I've been surprised by some of the things I've heard of some of my colleagues that I've known for years, and some of the deals they've made, or when they took advantage of somebody else. So I think for me, it's been eye-opening, because there are people that have good reputations in the industry that have taken advantage of other nonprofits or other faith-based groups. So I think, you know, you have a balancing act. You want somebody that has integrity and has the skills. I think it's harder to find integrity than it is to find the skills, as sad as it is to say.
And when we talk about finding funding, can we make it, is it attractive enough for them to want to do this work for us, or?
Well, the funding, there's always funding for the sticks and bricks. So sticks and bricks, depending on site's economics, whether you can get enough density and the site is, and the site, the cost of the land works, which in Houston is more of a matter of the location of the property and whether it's competitive as a tax credit deal than anything. So there is Houston's a large enough market where there's capital funding, if you're talking about pre-development funding, that's why you partner with developers, because you pay for the upfront costs can be prohibitive. So, I mean, typically for a small development, I would give an example here in California for a small 50-unit development, we're maybe spending $500,000 before we get in the ground, and then we'll get reimbursed. So the developer always puts that at risk, knowing that they'll get that money back when they start construction, but they could lose it if they don't perform. So that's why the model encourages churches to partner with developers, so that in terms of this pre-development heavy lifting, you get the upside of the equity in your properties, but you don't take on the risk.
Okay, so I think my question was, if I'm asking these individuals to serve on my team,
Yeah.
Can we expect that we're able to get the kind of funding that's going to be attractive for them to want to do this?
On the individual level, I think that's a bit more challenging. I mean, I think that on our team, I think that most of us, or a good portion of us, don't receive any remuneration. I think Jill does it for free. I volunteer. I don't get paid for any of my time. I think John's in a similar boat where he's compensated through another organization, but this falls within his scope. So it's, I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be a challenge. But I think I think that at the end of the day, you'll be, if you get a good anchor and somebody with a vision, you could at least build a coalition and get traction. But
So
it's
We're
let
gonna
me jump
talk.
in
I'm
on
looking
that.
for
Yeah,
people
we're
that's
going to
willing to
talk next
volunteer.
about the finance for a
Yeah.
minute, and we
Yeah.
don't have a lot of time left, but I appreciate a lot what Hugh is saying, and I think that if people are willing to catch the vision and they see the value, none of us started with any financing. It was grants that we got much later, and so you really need to find people with the passion and the commitment. And what they've done in this sense with the Washington team, he already has a team of committed people, but he's been now meeting with his team members and asking, now, what are your financial needs? So he can begin to discern, how is he going to write a grant? How is he then going to shape a grant based on what the needs are in the committee? And so we've been able to get grants through Chan Zuckerberg. If people are only coming at this because they want to get paid to do it initially, it might possibly be the wrong person. I'm not sure, but I mean, people do need to be remunerated, of course, but there's got to be some level of catching the vision of equipping churches so they're not taken advantage of, so they know what they're doing and they're not blindsided, and it's part of their vision. And so it's really a service to the church and that we're providing. But John O, I think you're there, right? I don't see your name.
John's phone, his
Yep.
device died, and he's recharging.
Oh, okay. So I
But
wondered
we'll
if this
talk
is
about the funding, and then
Okay.
I'll lead it into John's.
Okay, great, thanks. Do you have to go right now? You do. Okay, thank you so much, Andre. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so a couple of thoughts about how to get this funded. Absolutely agree with what Jill said, and Hugh, in terms of like finding the person that is a person of integrity, that shares values with congregations, right? Has that background, has a faith perspective, shares a love for the church, right? And a desire to support the church writ large is, and some of the soft skills is really, really, really critical. So when we started this, we the funding strategy that we used is an at-risk model. Okay, the second one in here, where the advisory team, we would take on the work without payment upfront. We later considered, asking for a smaller amount of funding from the church up front, but basically doing the work without receiving remuneration until the agreement with the developer is executed. Now, if you're talking about tax credit funded affordable housing, right, which is a significant bucket within what we do, but it's not everything that we do, but it is a lot of the projects. The kinds of services that we provide to the landowner, in this case, the church, are eligible costs for the tax credits to pay for the public funding sources to pay for. So that means you get the deal done, you get the developer on board, you can say in your RFP, developer, you need to pay us back for all of the work that we have done up to this point. And that's a negotiating position that should be able to be defended, because they can take that money and they can just roll it into the project cost, and they can have the public funding source pay for that. So that was kind of the starting model for us. And I think this is a really viable model. This is actually our long-term business model as well. We have grants now, but who knows if the grants will always be there, right? So long-term, we want to be able to sustain ourselves, sustainably, right? Just through the projects themselves. What's the challenge with that? Well, obviously it takes time to put these projects together. And then, there's risk, right? Not all of the projects, not all of the churches that you start talking to are going to end up actually doing the deal. And I know at first, we probably had a pretty low hit rate. With time, we've come to understand much better, like earlier, which congregations are legitimately interested and legitimately likely to do a project and which ones are not. And so I think our success rate is going up over time, and hopefully will continue to go up, making this a workable model. But that's kind of the baseline for us. Now, also the first thing on here is self-pay, and I don't mean you pay yourself. I mean the churches pay out of pocket for the services that you provide. It really depends on who the church is, the context, obviously the level of economic wherewithal that the churches have. I know that we have many churches and denominations where they can't even think about something, about paying for the fees that it might take to get through a process like this. Might be $25,000 or something. Can't even think about it or wouldn't consider it. And there are others that they're used to hiring consultants and hiring people, church growth consultants, right? Those kinds of things. And it's an accepted part of what, the stewardship of the church. So that may be an option, but we found for the vast majority of the churches that we were going to serve, it was not going to be an option. So we went with the at-risk model. Now, after we started doing some projects, started having results to show, then we were able to then parlay it into grants, and that's now what we have that we're able to operate from. We have a grant now that's, I think, about $150,000 per year, which sustains our work, and it does provide income to me and Andre as with a professional level compensation for that. Not saying that we're getting rich off of it. You know, I have a whole staff. I have architects.
Can I ask a quick question, Phil?
Yeah, sure.
So are you paid on the deal or you paid a salary?
We are paid. So we have our own businesses. So our businesses just bill hourly to the
Mhm.
grant.
Okay. Mhm.
And yeah, you know, I have multiple people in our firm, so everybody has a different billable rate. We feel that it's important not to do this on a percentage of the deal, because then again, you know, that warps your incentives.
Mhm.
So we prefer just to be paid by the hour. You know, I mean, there can be, and sometimes the churches will want like a cap on the amount, the total amount for the project, but
So it's just based on the actual hours that you work, but not like 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week, like it's actual billable hours.
that's right. Yep. Yeah. And in our case, because we're consultants too, so we, you know, we don't bill like meetings like this, you know, or
Right.
administrative time. We don't bill that. It's only our actual technical time working with the churches, but you know, it could be structured different ways. It could definitely be salaried as well. You know, John and More at LA Voice, that's a nonprofit organization. So the grants do provide salary dollars for that.
Mhm.
So, you know, you just have to sort of see what everybody's situation is. But that's how we do it. We were able to build on prior relationships, really, LA Voice, John and Mora's organization that had prior funding relationships with Chan Zuckerberg Initiative and other foundations that they've been supported by for a longer term, and you know, sort of saw that Chan Zuckerberg was getting very interested in housing, and so able to parlay that into the grant. You know, you need to be a nonprofit organization, right, or have a fiscal sponsor if you want to receive grants. If you're going after philanthropies that are larger and bigger dollars, you know, they're probably going to want to see a track record of smaller grants being made first before they make a big investment. So I don't know that this is super possible for everybody from day one. For us, it was probably a year and a half of working before we got our first grant.
Mhm.
I think though denominations, I mean, we have one example on these meetings, right? Our Drew from Spokane, Washington, who's you know, he's entirely paid for by the presbytery, I believe, or the synod, wherever he is. And so denominations, you know, may be much more likely to fund this kind of thing. They have not done it in our case in Southern California. They're not funders of ours, but I think that there is a possibility more broadly as well.
Any questions for Phil on these different approaches we have used or are using to get the funding?
This isn't so much on funding, but what is like when you're finding people and asking them to kind of join this team, what type of time commitment are you what am I asking people to do? Like how much of their life are they going to contribute to this?
We meet as a committee every other week, and we meet for about 2 hours, hour and a half to 2 hours. And then there's the design group that meets in Phil's office every Tuesday afternoon. And outside of that, can you describe your time commitment, Phil?
Well, you know, obviously it depends on how many churches you have, how many congregations you have. And, you know, it starts smaller. at the beginning, you have startup costs. It's a startup business, basically. This is what this is. And so at the beginning, there's going to be a lot of time spent on just thinking about how to get organized, figuring out how to work together, you know, negotiating things like funding, all of that. And then over time, as you get more congregations, hopefully, then it becomes more of the technical work. Where we are right now is our team, the Roy Group team, we are spending about 120, about 100 hours a month.
But that's for everyone on the team
That's
together.
for everyone. Yeah, that's for everyone. So we have a staff of 8 employees.
Staff of what?
8 employees that are, and this is just our planning and design.
You're just, so, oh, okay, so you're the planning design team. That's not your office, that's a part of this group, right? Making
That's Bill's office
That's his office?
in his firm doing this work, but they're part of this committee and their company is committed to this work.
Or doing the
It's just a
design?
small part of the work they do. He has contracts with cities and does
Mhm.
a lot of other work that is planning,
Okay.
design work, yeah.
So when you say design, Phil, can you clarify, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, because you don't really need to design an entire project. You know, what you do need to do is figure out what you can build via zoning.
On the
How many
level?
units will it be, right? Because that's gonna influence
Funding.
getting developers interested and the compensation for the land and all that sort of thing. But also discussions about, okay, well, in most churches, well, we've got to knock down the old education building. But, we have our Bible study group, they still got to find a place to meet. So, where are we going to do that? And you're taking away our parking lot, but like, can we build parking back into the building? Or where are you going to put what parking strategy are you going to have for us in the church? Or, some cases we're demolishing the entire site and we need you to think about what does a new sanctuary look like for us within a mixed use affordable housing building. And so what you need to look at is just conceptual. It's more site planning.
Mhm.
And it's more about, having it's more about getting it to where the church can buy into it and where they can have a clear expression about the space, a clear vision about the spaces that are going to belong to them, what they want
Mhm.
in the development.
Enough choices of concept design so they can imagine it. You want them to visualize it,
Mhm.
the height, the bulk, the size, and kind of go, oh, that looks good there. No, not there,
I know
So
you might
you
not
provide
talk
them
about,
You provide them a few design options or you do?
Yeah, yep, and just at a high level, again,
Mhm. And your firm is what, an architectural firm or what?
Urban design and planning.
Urban design and planning, okay.
Yeah, and Maura is an architect, and Maura's on with LA Voice. So although she's sort of part of the design team.
Yeah, she comes.
Yeah, I mean,
to-
I'm not an architect technically, but I'm an architectural designer. So I would say, even though these designs are happening at a high level, I do want to note that it's very important that you're, being realistic about what you can actually fit on the site and not over promising. And so I think in that regard, architectural experience is really important in addition to planning. And so I think it maybe is confusing in the conversation for us to conflate planning and architecture because they're 2 different roles within our team, but it's quite cumbersome in certain respects because you do want to give like an accurate and imaginative idea to the congregation, but you also don't want to overpromise what can actually realistically fit on that site.
Mhm.
So Jessica, I think you had your hand up and then we need to take the last 10 minutes to look at some dates and for our next meetings, as well as the
I
apprenticeship.
had a really important question.
Um,
About the churches, what the churches will get out of it. by putting their land up?
It's typically the
With the
long-term
prospect.
ground lease, and that might be a good topic for the next time. And in terms of the apprenticeship, when we talk about you all coming here with your full teams, and we're hoping that will be in May, that you'll get to have face-to-face with Andre, who can talk about how he structures that long-term ground lease. And
Yeah.
that's where, at least mostly with our model, the church gets the funding in for that.
Mhm.
Yeah. So Jessica, you had a quick question. Yeah.
So something you brought up that I think could maybe be another conversation. How do you decide like which churches you're going to engage with, right? Because it might not be a viable project. So what are the questions you ask yourself before? How do you talk through that with the church? That's just something I'm interested to. And also the ground lease, right? Like part of this, like they're getting the value of the land. Are they able to ask for some of the developer fee? I don't know, like, it doesn't need to be now.
Yeah, and just the other thing is, and Andre will get into this, the ground lease should be unsubordinated.
What does that mean?
In layman's term, it means a bank can't foreclose on the church.
Mm,
The bank will go after the developer instead of the church if for whatever reason it doesn't get built.
okay. Mhm.
There's
Yeah,
a lot of
that's
technical
right.
things that y'all need to learn. You know, so I hope you're taking good notes. Yeah. Phil, you wanted to add to that? I'm sorry.
Oh, just to answer Jessica's question real quickly. Broadly, we asked 3 questions, and there's some analysis that goes behind each of these 3 that you'll see when you come here. But we ask, what's the zoning? Is the zoning enough to do a tax credit affordable housing project? And if it isn't, it doesn't mean we can't do it, right? But it just means that this is kind of a different expectations, right? And a different kind of project. Okay, so that's one. The second one is congregational will. So
What was it?
congregational
Desire of the congregation. Yeah.
Congregational what?
Will, their desire.
Will, okay, all right.
And so, yeah, sometimes it's like, oh, there's 2 people in the congregation that are really interested and they want to join the cohort, and they do, and it's great, and we love supporting them through that. But, then they have to go and convince everybody else, that's different from like, the session or the board, or, if it's a ecclesiastical model, this just the pastor is like decided that this is going to happen. They've all been looking at it for a long time, haven't quite figured out exactly how to do it, but they're decided that they're going to do it, right? That's much stronger. And then the third is political will as well. And that might not be as important if you have really good zoning, but certainly if you have bad zoning and you're going to need a rezone, then political will is going to be very important. The overall attitude of the community, though, toward affordable housing is also important to take into account. Although I will also say that building affordable housing in places that don't want affordable housing is usually also extremely important. So, but yeah, those are the 3 like big things that we look at.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and I think to answer your question more fully, Jessica, it's easy to conflate what a affordable housing developer would get in terms of the development fee, and your question earlier was about performance, and we don't, that's typically not mixed in with our model. That's the kind of thing you would do if you're the actual developer. And so, but there may be, if they want to do a joint venture, typically with affordable housing, you're not going to get a lot of money with joint venture just because the rents are low. And so it's better to look at a ground lease rather than the limited amount you might get with a joint venture. But I think we need to switch gears for a minute. We have 3 really important housekeeping things to do in the next 5 minutes. And first, we need to find the dates when we're going to meet again. The team in Washington really wants to join us. They cannot meet at this Tuesday hour, but they can on a Thursday morning. And I think that would also work for the Northern California team. And so I got word that a Thursday morning would work. So I want to find out. Another possibility, I think, is Monday morning, but is that possible next month to look at Thursday in the morning to meet? And hopefully that can be our consistent time then. So today is the 21st, so a month from now, let's say we do it the 23rd in the morning. Is that possible for you all? And I need to know from our team as well, from Phil and John, Lucero, Hugh. And if it is that morning, what's the best time? If we say like 10:30 to noon or 10 to 11:30.
The earlier the better.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, so are you thinking more like 9 to 10:30?
That would be great.
9 a.m. works best for me, Jill. I have a meeting at 10 on Thursday, March 23rd. So
Okay.
9 a.m. works, but I can be here 9 to 10 and y'all can continue after that.
Okay, so I need to know also from Phil and John and Hugh.
It's fine with me. Yeah.
It's good with you, John? Okay, yes, great. And Hugh, is that good for you?
Let me double check something real quick. There's a conference that's around that time. Let me
Okay.
double check the dates.
Okay. Well, we have to find the majority of us, and it made me sad that 2 key players were not able to join because of the time today, but hopefully next time we can all meet. Does that work for you, Michelle? I think I saw your head shake. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty flexible, so whenever that's great.
Fabulous. So the next is looking at our cohort and our apprenticeship dates that we're considering. The cohort dates are set. That's not flexible. And if you look in chat, you can see the spring cohort dates.
And what are the dates?
Look in the chat and you can find them all there.
For the
It's
cohort?
Saturday, April 22nd from 9 to 12 in person. And obviously you're not going to be able to join that. We might be able to like have a camera as you're looking, and so we could do a live stream or something. So you can at least see the tour of the beautiful site that Hugh Martinez has developed for permanent supportive housing, which is housing for chronically homeless. It's an adaptive reuse of a mortuary. And so, so then the next date is Thursday, April 27th in the, and then May.
On the 4th.
Yeah,
Thursday
and then
night.
Thursday again. These are all the same time. They're all from
April the
4:30.
27th.
Yeah, the 27th, May 4th, and May 11th, all from 4:30 to 6:30.
Pacific time.
So
I think the 27th, I might have a conflict. Let me just.
we'll
April
I'm sure we
27th?
can get permission to probably record these so we can share some of them that way.
Mhm.
But this is obviously not where we're working with any churches you'd be working with. These are the churches that we're working with, and you get to just
Mhm.
observe and sit in and see
Mhm.
how we go about doing a cohort. So you're
Okay.
learning by watching us do it,
Mhm. Mhm.
And then the last date is Saturday, May 20th. And this is where we actually are hoping you can come in person, that you can be there, because we will be going around the room working with each of the churches and the congregations and looking at their design, possible designs and having all kinds of discussion. And we feel like that would be very important for you to be there. And we're hoping you can stick around then through the next dates. If you look on the chat, you can see the apprenticeship dates. So we would have you fly in on the 19th, and then that cohort is on the May 20th. We could have lunch and debrief with you that day, and maybe later have more conversations at dinner, whatever, with some of us. And then Sunday, we're looking at going to a worship service at a church where we already have gone through this process. You can meet the pastor. It's a Black church, and he can show you the designs, and you can walk around and see where he's at on his development. Then we're hoping that with Hugh Martinez, that you all can actually physically see the site and get an in-person tour, since it's probably pretty hard to come that first day of the cohort. And then on Monday, you'd get to spend some time with Andre and another gal we know that has done a dissertation on churches around the country doing this kind of work, or being involved in housing. And then on Tuesday, you'd go to Phil's office and see how the design team works together on the churches, and then fly out on Wednesday. So any questions on that? And is that possible for any of you, those dates, to actually be here in person? Depending on how many of us and your teams and how full they are, hopefully all filled out by then, we'll be looking at possible lodging that be reasonable. Would not be able to pay your flight to come here, but we want to see what we can do to try to find more reasonably priced lodging. So, so give me your feedback on that idea of physical gathering of all of us plus other team members you have.
I think that's very possible. Mhm.
Would that work for you, Camelia, and
I
your
think it
team?
will. I
Yeah,
think so.
Michelle?
Yeah, I'm definitely available and would love to join. And I can't speak for, I know Rick, if he is available, would probably love to join as well. Realistically, it's like, I would love to say, yes, we're going to have a full team by then and everyone's going to be on board, but I just have no idea where we're going to be at in that kind of process. So I don't know, are we still, like, if it's me and Rick only at that point, are we still able to participate and come, or do we need to like wait a year until we have a full team and then come, or how does that work?
Phil, can
Would
you
love to
respond
be
that?
there, so
Yeah.
I would think that it's good for you to come.
Oh, you're still
I would-
learning.
Yeah. I mean, you have a lot of background too in this, so it's not like.
Might be better at recruiting after you come.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
But I also think you may get a team member too between now and then.
Yeah,
It's a good goal, to shoot for.
for sure.
Mm.
Yeah, we'd love to
How
be-
about the Denver folks? Is that, I think Jessica said that one of those dates don't work for her.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that. I don't know if we'll be able to make the whole thing, or it might just be, we're kind of the same boat as Michelle. Will probably be just us unless we get some other team members that on board between now and then. But yeah, we're gonna talk about it and we'll let you know as soon as we can.
Yeah, I think it's enough time that you guys probably could get some other team members if depending on your time. Hopefully you can get out there and start finding out who might be out there. And God is big, look at Camelia, she got this awesome team member, So I just think it's a Holy Spirit thing. So let's close in prayer and thank God for our time.
Thank you, Lord.
Lord, we thank you so much for each person on this call today and the opportunity to do your work and imagine how we can help churches to flourish and thrive that are struggling, and help them begin to dream and imagine ways they could serve the community in ways they never imagined could really happen. And so help us, Lord, help us to follow your lead. May your Spirit go before us, guiding, and help our ears and hearts and minds be tuned in to those people you want to serve with those on this team.
Yes,
May
God.
your spirit lead and guide, and we thank you in advance in your son's precious name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
you guys, thank you.
Yeah.
A minute.
Good meeting everybody.
Yeah. Excited about what you all are doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to stop the recording. Does anyone know? Oh, yeah. Yeah.